any good acting has behavior with it.
Nate, why? Why such bitterness? What have I done to you? Get out! You're no nephew of mine. As far as I'm concerned, you're as dead as that wretch Cermak.
You have to embellish the words with a certain amount of gravity. Because we're talking about things that are really important here, that are kind of secret. There's a natural kind of darkness when you talk about noir. You know, it's great. I love it.
Although edited for television, tonight's thriller contains scenes of suspense and violence which may be unsuitable for young viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination and the perhaps never to be defined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, moi, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am robcasting at you. Impromptuly? Is that a word? From the Robservatory. This is Robservations episode 1091. And it's the last day of February. It's not a leap year. You know, it's been a little difficult last week or two to stream and talk about entertainment industry stuff. You know, my personal life, my personal world, maybe the Robservatory is going to go away, housing issues, you know, a lot of Americans go through them. We certainly are. We're on the precipice of oblivion, but hey, you never know. You just keep going through it, see what happens. War with Iran, you know, rampant anti-Semitism, hatred everywhere. And my entire brand is to be exuberant and enthusiastic and optimistic about our world. And it's interesting because coming from a 70s dystopian film lover background, starting in 1970 with Colossus, the Foreman Project, which warned about AI, Logan's Run, the computer-run civilization. You know, the world today should be right in line with what I grew up with. And indeed, perhaps it is. But I have been somebody in my life that has been pretty much, honestly, exuberant about the world, the universe, the possibilities of human existence, all of those things. And I was fortunate to grow up in a world where when I was born, cinema was only half as old as it is now, which is wild. So if you think about it, I've seen a lot of different things. And I loved cinema. I've loved storytelling. I've loved art. I've loved music. And I grew up in a time being born, literally, want me to blow your mind? It blows my mind. I was born in 1967. Even I don't believe that. I'm like, wait, what? I was born in the summer of love. It's wild when you think about that. I mean, considering that I've been online since April. In April of this year, it'll be my 11th anniversary streaming on YouTube. My first day streaming on YouTube was on episode 6 of AMC Heroes before it became Collider Heroes, because my good friend John Schnepp said, hey man, I'm doing this new YouTube show thing, and I showed up and I did this show with him and John Campia, who I had never met until that day. So it's amazing to me, in the last 11 years, I felt could have been a lifetime. And it has been extraordinarily difficult. Like, I feel like most of my life as a imagination connoisseur, and as I've talked about a lot on this channel, my awakening happened when I was about 5. When I became aware, I became conscious, like Hal in Urbana, Illinois. You know, I became conscious and aware of the fact that I was an imagination connoisseur. Star Trek, The Twilight Zone, Planet of the Apes, this confluence of events in 1972 on television changed my life, turned me into an imagination connoisseur. This year is the 50th anniversary of Logan's Run that I saw at the John Dan Cinema when I was 9 years old. I saw the trailers for it. I begged. I talked. This is the problem. In my house, when I saw something, I was like the worst kind of repetitive, parrot, I don't know what you'd call me. I was obsessed. I would see like, we have to go. I was like Rain Man, but, you know, not Wapner. Logan's Run. Got to see Logan's Run. We're going to go to Logan's Run. We're going to see Logan's Run. Right, Mom? We're going to go see Logan's Run. They're saying it's opening at the John Dance Theater. It's the biggest theater. We're going to go see Logan's Run. I mean, I don't think my parents understood why, but we had to go. And as I've said, Logan's Run at the John Dance Theater was a double feature. So Logan's Run, big movie opening from MGM. It also, the second feature was Fantastic Planet, my favorite animated film of all time. René Laloux. And the funny thing was, so my mom took me and my sister to see, who's 7. We go to see Logan's Run. Boobs. There was boobs in Logan's Run. There was boobs in the Love Shop. There was Jenny Agutter boobs. And I knew at 9, I was a straight man. I was straight. Because all I wanted to do was put my tongue all over those boobs. I know people are like, you can't say that. Sure I can. I think more people should. Just be honest. I don't want to watch it on the screen. I saw it on the screen and I realized I want to get up close and personal. Remember, we only see in 50 millimeter lenses. So the closer you get or the further away you get, the more cinematic it is. Getting close is always good. But so these things were like formative. You know, I was 9. What did Logan's Run make me do? I had to go out and read the book. George Clayton Johnson, William F. Nolan had to read the novel Logan's Run, which, by the way, there was not one shred of Logan's Run, the movie, that was in the book. The book was a totally different experience. Beginning with, in the movie, people die at 30. In the novel, people die at 21. Because the novel was born out of when I was born, the 60s. Never trust anyone over 30. As Charlton Heston said, the end of Planet of the Apes. Well, never trust anyone over 21 in the novel Logan's Run. Sandman, Sandman, leave my door. Don't come back here anymore. And it really got me. That's what got me into reading. Now, when I was 9, I turned 10 in the 4th grade. Another formative year. What happened when I turned 10? A week later, Star Wars opened. Another thing that happened, I saw Logan's Run. And then I know exactly. So Logan's Run came out in 1976. And in 1976, for Christmas, the Christmas holiday, Hanukkah break, my parents took us to Hawaii for the first time, as people did in Seattle. I went to Hawaii, and I found at Whalers Village, next to the Kaanapali Beach Hotel, I found the novel Logan's Run and read it in Hawaii. And I was 9. And my 4th grade teacher was named Mrs. Walton. And Mrs. Walton, and she had a TA named Miss Arn, who was kind of plump but really sexy. I loved Miss Arn. And Mrs. Walton read John Christopher's Tripods trilogy to us. The White Mountains, The City of Golden Lead, and The Pool of Fire. And I was completely enamored of this. And she would read it to us after we had lunch period. And then after lunch, we'd have recess. And then after recess, we'd have like nap time or put our heads down. But what nap time was Mrs. Walton read to us. And she was reading to us John Christopher's Tripods trilogy. And for me, they were my Harry Potter. And I love those books, but it was interminable how long it took. I mean, she would read like 10 pages a day. I'm like, fuck this shit. I went and bought those books, and you can get them in like a boxed set with and I have the original covers. I still have them. Because they were kind of these they were very cool. The original covers of The White Mountains, The City of Golden Lead, The Pool of Fire, really cool. And I devoured those books. And then it was great because then I could sit back and enjoy Mrs. Walton's reading stylings, and Miss Arn read those as well. So to hear those, I mean, it was unbelievable. So you had Logan's Run. I had John Christopher's Tripods trilogy because there was not the fourth prequel book. And then I joined the Science Fiction Book Club and started reading all of the great sci-fi classics at the time. And then Star Wars hits us, the end of my fourth grade year, May 25th, 1977, and I saw that was Friday, so I saw it on, I think it was Friday. Was it Wednesday? But I saw it on that Sunday, the opening weekend. I mean, it was unbelievable. The whole thing was unbelievable. So everything that I was seeing was astonishing. And then delving into great science fiction literature, and I was still watching endless reruns of Star Trek and endless reruns of The Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits and Land of the Giants and Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea and The Time Tunnel. You know, all the Irwin Allen shows, and even things like Leave It to Beaver and My Three Sons and Wait Till Your Father Gets Home and I Dream of Jeannie and Gilligan's Island. All of these things I was watching and just absorbing it all. And it was all amazing. And what was interesting about all of this was it was all about contextualizing the adult world for me. And even back then, I knew that the people that were writing all this stuff, now you could say, Rob, how can you say that Logan's Run was like genuine? I'm like, look, man, I don't know what to tell you. You know, Logan's Run is not necessarily a great adaptation of the novel, but I don't know if you could have made it that way. I don't know if you could have murdered a bunch of 21-year-olds on screen or show them in sexual, who knows? But all of it back then, I was not as discerning as I am today. But it was all about the awe and wonder of the world around us. All of these thoughts and all of these ideas. And everything was so fascinating. And I was like, it didn't matter where I was looking. I mean, whether I was seeing Logan's Run or whether I was seeing the land, the island at the top of the world, the Disney movie, or Jodie Foster and Candle Shoe or Treasure of Matacumbe. It didn't matter at that time. All of it was exciting, and then you'd see the re-release of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Everything was astonishing. There was nothing bad because, as I've told people on the show a million times, I would watch anything, science fiction, fantasy, and horror. You promise me a monster, and if the monster shows up in the last 5 minutes, I was satisfied. But what it was all about was the storytelling. And it was all about trying to contextualize, what did these stories mean? Like, why these stories? And one thing led, the fact that you could see a movie that would lead you to a novel that would then, in your fourth grade class, when Mrs. Walton would read The White Mountains. I mean, and you're like, so to me, movies and novels, and then there were albums. I had this Peter and the Wolf album. Dun, 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 whatever, but then they told the story, and then I would get Power Records Presents, and there were Marvel Comics, and there was Star Trek, and so all of it was intertwined, and it was amazing. And that's what really cemented my love of all of this. And to me, movies, music, comics, novels, what it all represented was the much bigger world that I was hoping to join. And I wanted to contribute to all of it. Cut to today. Cut to the life I've led as a 58-year-old man. Here I'm talking on YouTube, and there's always every day somebody sends me the Simpsons meme, old man shouting at clouds. And I've said this before, you're not clever. sending memes to people is like the most lazy, intellectually dishonest thing people can do. Especially when you've been sent the same meme 487 times, you want to reach through the internet and go, you need to do better. You need to not allow memes to do your thinking for you. Write me a fucking letter, man. Tell me what you really think. Don't just send me a meme. A meme tells me you can't read and you can't write. And you didn't even create the meme. And it is the laziest fucking thing in the world. But I get it all the time. Old man shouting at clouds. I should go back into YouTube. I think I would have to go back 187 years to find the first time somebody sent me that old man shouting at clouds Simpsons meme. But you know what? I want to be nice. So everybody that sends it to me, although I'm getting a little tired of it, because one, I know way more about this stuff than most of the people that send me that meme. And two, I've thought about it a lot longer than they have. And three, if that's the only reference they have, ooh, you got to do better, people. But anyway, I've now reached a point where I have sailed through my life on enthusiasm and excitement, and all of this stuff has sustained me. And I've had a great life. As a fan, if somebody were to say, one day I'm going to write a book about being an imagination connoisseur, my whole life, being a fan too, I have had the best time. Every fan fantasy I could have had literally has been fulfilled. Every single one. I wrote and directed a movie starring my childhood idol, William Shatner. Come on. I could have stopped right there. I got to make a horror movie for Warner Brothers that got a write-up in Fangoria from my boy Rob G., who, by the way, if you've not seen the new Icons of Fright podcast on this channel with Bill Lustig, the man who directed the original Maniac, which was the very first movie I had a bootleg video cassette of before it even played on the West Coast. Shh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lustig. I've subsequently bought Maniac many times on many different formats. I put that money right into your coffers, sir. But anyway, now, where we are in the world, I feel lost. I feel frustrated. I feel sad. I feel angry. I feel like these flights of fancy that I have used, kind of like helium. I've been sucking in on the helium joy my whole life, and it's kept me buoyant, kept me lighter than air. I don't know how long that's going to last. Where we are today. I'll give you a couple examples. And I'm not going to get political necessarily. But I was adopted, first of all. I was adopted, as was my sister, into a lovely family, Jewish family in Seattle, Washington. I grew up in a place called Mercer Island, which I could never afford to live on now. But I was raised Jewish. And I had I went to Temple D. Hirsch, or as some people called it, Temple D. Church, because we were so reformed, Temple D. Hirsch Sinai. And I went for years, and I was bar mitzvahed. I had to learn to speak Hebrew. And I had to do all these things. But one of the interesting things when I was growing up was the confluence of pop culture with being Jewish. Because we are a lot closer to the Holocaust and the foundation of the Israeli state than we are today. And there was a lot of people. My father served in World War II. My adoptive father served in World War II. And I've spoken on this channel before. One of his good friends, Captain John Harder, I came across an actual UFO story in a book. And I actually got to, that he was in this story. He'd seen a UFO, and I got to ask him about it personally. And he told me he couldn't say what it was. And I was like, ooh, because I love strange phenomenon and human existence and all that. But there was a lot of, in 1978, there was the TV miniseries Holocaust that starred Meryl Streep and James Woods. And growing up in the 70s and 80s, there was so much material about the Holocaust and what happened to the Jews in Europe. Even we got science fiction shows in 1983, the V miniseries, which was, even the V insignia looked like a swastika. And it was apparent to me that everybody knew what happened. It wasn't just 6 million Jews. It was 6 million other people that were murdered, and how many Russians died fighting the Nazis. 70 million people died in World War II. I thought this was all settled. I thought it was all settled because there were so many different stories from the Holocaust. In my entire life, I thought everybody knew. But then I realized, as of today, Schindler's List came out in 1993. And, Christmas, for me, growing up, was always Jewish movie day. Because we would celebrate Christmas until I was 5. Then my mom, we had to have a proper Jewish education, and so I couldn't celebrate Christmas anymore, even though I loved it. There's not a better holiday in the world. There's not a better imagination connoisseur holiday than Christmas. People could say Halloween, but here's the thing. Halloween is overtly about imagination connoisseurship, where Christmas is kind of the back door to imagination connoisseurship. And I don't mean that in any kind of an untoward way. But there's the religious aspect, and then there's the fantastical aspect, and they can exist together or apart, depending on what you want to do. But I loved Christmas. I loved the Year Without a Santa Claus, Heat Miser, Cold Miser, Mother Nature. They were all too much. I loved Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I love the Santa Claus is coming to town. Put one foot in front of the other. Soon you'll be walking out the door. I loved all that shit. And I also, my Jewish education was also bolstered by how many shows we got about World War II and what happened in the Holocaust. And not just in the Holocaust, but the entirety of World War II. And back in the late 60s, 70s, 80s, The World at War, that documentary series, amazing. And so everybody was very educated on all of these things. And it was all settled. It was all settled what happened after World War II. The defeat of the Ottomans in World War I. The fact that there were many Jews that moved into the area in the 1880s, bought up land where Israel is now, and they literally drained the swamps, cured malaria, made sure that was more habitable land, bringing in more Arab settlers to the land because they couldn't stay there because of the malaria. And this was not something everybody debated. This was factual, and people knew it. It wasn't based on your feelings. It was just stuff that happened. It was history. And it was presented in a very matter-of-fact way by very matter-of-fact people. And it was because the real history was not written by the victors. It was just, here's what happened. And I think that if you look into mid-20th century history, actually all of 20th century history is very interesting. If you look at it from Teddy Roosevelt all the way up into the 2000s, the entire 100-year history of the 20th century is incredibly interesting. So many advances were made technologically. Remember, couldn't fly at the beginning of the 20th century. And my grandmother, Nana Babe, she was born in 1900. She died when Return of the Jedi came out in 1983. And I remember she was a pistol. And, if you think about, one day it occurred to me, I never even thought to talk to my grandmother. I'm like, oh my God. Nana Babe was born in 1900, which means she was 10 in 1910. And my grandfather, Ralph Schoenfeld, was born in 1910. And then I started to ask them, I was like, Grandpa, you were in high school and college in the roaring 20s. What was that like, dude? And he was at Princeton in the early 1930s. And when I started to ask them about what was it like seeing the entire 20th century, my grandfather died when he was 97. He died in 2008. And when I finally started talking to them about all of this, it was amazing because I could hear their different perspectives about what happened. Both, by the way, both Jews. Ralph Schoenfeld's family came over from Germany, founded a furniture store, Schoenfeld's Furniture, in Tombstone, Arizona. They actually his ancestors knew Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp, and then they moved to San Diego and L.A., and they followed the Alaskan gold trade into Seattle. So that's how and Nana Babe Burnett, that was my dad's mom. And it was very interesting. Cut to today. My God. It's amazing how ill-informed both sides are, or all sides are, about the land, the conflict, what's happening. Never more so than watching what's been going on, especially today. And I'm not going to get into it, but up is down, down is up, black is white, white is black. It's incredible to see because the reality, I think people need to watch more movies. People need to watch the more, and I hate to say this because movies are not true. They're not real, but a lot of people clearly have not read their history. They have not watched enough movies. They don't know anything. And they're speaking out of, like everything else today is all about feelings. It's wild. It is wild. But as somebody who every year got to meet people with green numbers tattooed on their wrists, hearing firsthand accounts of what actually happened in the Holocaust as opposed to what might have happened or what, pray tell, didn't happen, has been a wild experience to watch. So it gets tougher and more difficult to do even this channel where people don't want me to talk about politics, which is weird because everything that I was always interested in politics, even as a little kid. In 1976, I've talked about this, there was the bicentennial. Americans celebrate our 200th year of independence. It's now 50 years later, and we're going to celebrate 250 years of independence. And I feel that whatever you think about the current state of America, if you go back to our Constitution and the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, one of the great documents in all of human history. Now, whether we can live up to that's one thing, but I would say that all Americans, all of us, if you're an American, you believe in the Constitution. You believe in the Bill of Rights. And the men that wrote that document tried to make it so we're not saying that this is the end-all be-all. We're trying to create a document that for future generations is malleable. As the world changes, we expect you to participate in government the way we have. I think that's kind of lost. Now, to get a little political, one of the interesting things about living in Southern California, when I moved to Seattle, I never moved to Seattle. When I was born in Seattle, it was, to be fair, we had a big Asian community. I never thought of anybody who was of Asian descent, any kind of a minority. They were just there, and I loved Asian girls. And it was all good, but I also loved Asian culture and Asian food, and I developed a love of Asian film. But I never thought of anybody from the Pacific Rim as, I just thought of them as Americans. Moving to Los Angeles was a revelation in 1988. I got to see culture. I've talked about lowrider culture I really loved when I first moved here because we didn't have that. We had no Latino culture in Seattle. I loved going to East Los Angeles. I loved going to the music venues. I loved driving all over the city. Los Angeles was an amazing place because you could get anything here. I could go to Monterey Park and get Chinese laser discs with English translations of Japanese anime. I mean, it was incredible to live here. And what was so great was the food and the cultures. I mean, it wasn't just Latino culture. It wasn't just Asian culture. You could go to an Ethiopian restaurant. I know Sam Kinison would make jokes about that, but it was amazing to live here. And to live in Los Angeles, the great thing was there was all different kinds of people everywhere. And they were the lifeblood of the city. And you could tell that there were immigrants that had come here, whether they were legal or not. But from my perspective, I mostly met lots of immigrants that were very productive members of society. They'd started their own businesses. They'd brought their culture with them. And yet they wanted to be Americans. They loved being here. And one of the things that's really disturbed me is how living in Southern California now since 88, it's going to be my, 38th anniversary? No, it wouldn't be 38 because that would be 40. So your 36th anniversary, whatever it is. I moved here in 88. It's 2026. So I arrived here June 4th the day Star Trek The Motion Picture opened in 1982, and when my own film Free Enterprise opened in June of 99. But there was an article today in Deadline that I wanted to share. Kristen Stewart expresses support for the city's immigrants. LA doesn't exist without all of us. I thought that was a great sentiment. Does that mean I want criminals? No. Do we have lots of gang members? Yeah. But when I moved here in 88, the Bloods and the Crips were still killing each other in and around USC. The Lakers won the championship, and there was, if you went to a party, you didn't know if shots were fired. I mean, it was kind of a crazy place. But I want to read this article. Glenn Garner wrote this in Deadline today. Lifelong Angelino, Kristen Stewart, is advocating for her neighbors as ICE hits the street in Los Angeles and other cities across the country. When asked, what would break your heart if it disappeared from LA, the Oscar nominee praised immigrants as just as detrimental to the cities, or if they disappeared, immigrants disappeared, it would be just as detrimental to the city's identity as filmmaking and fast food. She says, I can't stand the idea that dismantling of the culture that did have a hand in making me who I am, which is so meaningless in the face of people's lives being completely unearthed, uprooted, destroyed. This is not who we are, she told Architectural Digest. Where I'm from, I don't identify with that right now. Stewart continued, and so I definitely am dying every day thinking, so do we make movies about this? Do we throw all of our money at it? Do we stop buying burgers in the daytime? What do we do about this? I can't fathom that it's happening until it doesn't happen. Los Angeles doesn't exist without all of us. Following the killing of U.S. citizens and L.A. local Keith Porter Jr., who was shot on New Year's Eve by an off-duty immigrations and customs enforcement officer, protests and public outcries have broken out all over the fatal ICE shootings of Minnesota's Renee Good and Alex Preddy, as well as the death of Savannah, Georgia's Linda Davis, who was killed this month in a chase involving ICE. Meanwhile, Stewart has recently invested in her hometown, buying the Highland Theater, which is amazing, with plans to reopen this 100-year-old building to the community. Now, here's the thing. Is talking about the immigration issue political? I would say no. I would say it's cultural. What's political is how we deal with this issue. Now, anyone who's lived in Southern California knows that Kristen Stewart is correct. We have a very vibrant, very incredible melting pot of immigrants from literally all around the world in this city. You can drive down one street. You could drive down Pico Boulevard, starting in Santa Monica at the ocean. You could drive down Pico and just drive straight through downtown Los Angeles, and you could probably eat at every different ethnic restaurant that would represent every part of this planet Earth of ours on one street, depending on how far you wanted to go. Now, I don't believe in open borders. I think that people who come to the United States should want to come here. I think the great strength, the great superpower of the United States is to take everybody from the rest of the world who believe in our Constitution and believe in our Bill of Rights. They all come here because we provide something the rest of the world doesn't. We as Americans, all of us, whatever side of the aisle you're on, we as Americans believe in dreams. We believe that if you want to think something up and do it, this is the place that you can. And our strength is to get all the people from the rest of the world, because there's not a lot of countries that believe in this. There's not a lot of belief systems that will allow it. Certainly certain religious belief systems, they don't want this at all. They want to see that gone. And our strength as Americans, that should surround us and bind us. The things that make us Americans is that we are the dreamers. We're the people of any other people on earth. We're the people that are like, hey man, come over here, make some shit up and let's make it happen. Let's do it. That's what our immigrants are great about. They come to this country to make shit happen. Now, I'm not saying I don't believe in open borders. Don't let everyone come here willy-nilly. Only let the best of the best, the people that really want it. We should have very strict immigration in this country. Let's be clear about this. And by the way, we don't want people who want to come to America. I don't believe in multiculturalism. I believe that America's strength is that we take all cultures, throw them into our giant gumbo pot. We take the best of everybody and we make one delicious bowl that you can eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I don't want people to look, that's not to say I don't like to go to like Ethiopian restaurants. You can have that. Keep your culture here. But collectively, Americans, it's the melting pot. That's what we want. That's the thing that makes us different than everyone else. We don't have some culture. Look, when I go to France, I don't want a melting pot. I want to go to fucking France. I want to see French people. I want to eat French bread. I want to see French cinema. I want to have French girls go out with me on a French evening by the Seine. When I go to Italy, I don't want to see other people than Italians. You know, I want to go to Florence and see the best art you can ever see. I want to go, I want to ride a bike through Tuscany. When I go to the UK, I want to see Brits. When I go to Ireland, I want to see the Irish. I want to go to Denmark and meet Danes. I don't want to see anybody else. They are not multicultural societies. They are cool because they are who they are. America's different. America, we take wherever you've come from, we will extract out and we will conjure it into the great American experiment. That's what makes us great and different from everyone else. Because the French, you go to a French cafe, you talk to a French person, they smoke cigarettes. I can't smoke because I need an American spirit yellow, but I can't smoke. The French person would say, why do you want to do what you want to do, Rob? Why do you want to do that? It's hard. It's read some Proust. We'll go to a museum. We'll have some good pasta. Actually, it's Italian. They don't have good pasta in France. They do, actually. We'll have a crepe. I don't even know what I'm doing. But the French, they're philosophers. They're not dreamers. Americans are dreamers. We're the best dreamers because we can conjure shit up and make it happen. Not a lot of people can do that. That's our strength. And you know what? We're so polarized now, we have forgotten that our strength, being dreamers, works on both sides. But it used to be that it was Americans, give us your tired, your huddled masses. Look at our great document, the Constitution, that's going to be celebrating. Well, all the country's going to be celebrating its 250th birthday. We're like the Hatfields and the fucking McCoys, man, and this is not where we should be. We got to remember why both sides are Americans. We have to stop defining ourselves by you're a colonizer, you're whatever you are. Why aren't we celebrating the whole reason that we're able to say what we can say and dissent the way we can do that is because we're Americans and we live under the rule of law and we are defined by our Constitution and the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. We cannot forget this. And we have forgotten it. And it's amazing to me how we've been played by the rest of the world. Bad actors that have, come on, man. Didn't anybody watch enough 70s conspiracy thrillers? Here's the thing that frustrates me. As an imagination connoisseur, everything that's been happening to the United States over the last 20 years, we've seen it all in movies. It's all come true, whether it's Colossus the Foreman Project or the Manchurian Candidate. We as Americans, because we don't read and don't watch movies before 1990 anymore, we have forgotten what has been done to us for the last 25 years, which bums me out. We are so gullible. You can look at people and you can hear what they say about certain things, like, and you can actually trace it back. If you look back, you can find out where the original propagandic tweet or TikTok video that people are spouting began. That's wild if you look into it. And like if you ask somebody, okay, tell me what it is you believe about whatever it is you believe. And if you ask them why do you believe that? Do you have any evidence to believe that? Where did you come up with that thought? They can't tell you. And not only that, but if you say, let's take a journey together, and let's together do an experiment. If you have a friend that has diametrically opposed views from you, why not, as an experiment, one night you get in a FaceTime call, you talk to you get live, and you're like, okay, what do we disagree about? And together, the two of you do a deep dive. And each one of you do a deep dive based on what you believe in terms of the historical accuracy, the historical documentation. And you guys do a deep dive together and find out whatever it is that you are, whatever you're opposed, whatever the viewpoints are that you can't get along with or whatever. Some person says this and another person says that. Together, because it only works if you guys are diametrically opposed, rather than screaming and yelling, which is, by the way, what is you've been programmed to do. No one wants you to do a deep dive. We have this newfangled contraption called the internet. You can go and do that deep dive. And if you do it together, and you're perfectly willing to say, okay, I'm going to put aside what I think I know, and you, my friend, and we're both friends, we're going to delve into this issue using the internet together. And we're going to find out, why do we believe this? Because I can tell you, 90% of the shit that I hear people say on the internet, they just have heard it from somebody else, some TikTok account, somewhere online, because I've traced it back, and I'm like, oh, that's where it began. And they don't even know anything. Anything. Like, even the base, like you're talking about, can you find... Like, if you're talking about, say, Israel and Palestine, the first thing I would ask people is, please show it to me on a map. You're talking about a conflict that is in a very specific geological or geographical location. Show it to me. Most people can't. So why do they have an opinion about it? They've been programmed to. And I mean programmed by social media, because social media has designed it so they tell you what you're supposed to know or think. And they know you're not going to look into it because no one's looking into it. Nobody reads. Why does Gen Z have less cognitive reasoning skills than their parents? This is not good. This has all been designed and programmed for us. And all I would say to everybody, just do a deep dive. Get your best friend. Get a good friend that you have a difference of opinion, even if it's on Marvel versus DC, even if it's with, do you like the Snyderverse? I don't. I do. But if you don't, take something easy. Pick your favorite. Like, did people really dislike The Empire Strikes Back when it came out? Yes, I've heard that. People hated it. I don't think that's true. Really? Well, let's go look. Pick a research partner. Pick a subject, any subject, and just do a deep dive. And even if you come away from that deep dive still disagreeing with your friend, I guarantee you will be enlightened in ways you couldn't possibly imagine. But no one's doing that anymore. Anyway, I think that's something to perhaps try and do. Let's see if I've been rambling on for 30 minutes. Let's see what people have been saying. Thomas, is it Benny? Hey, Rob, have you ever done a video on what you would have done with Return of the Jedi? I'd love to know what your version would have been. Yes. I've never done a video. Famously, I've talked about the fact that Return of the Jedi is the most disappointing cinematic experience I've had in my entire life. And again, it proves my point, because most people watching this show are younger than me. So for me, when I saw Star Wars the first Sunday it opened in 1977, it was a transcendent, life-changing moment in cinema. I can't beyond. I've talked about it, but I cannot tell you, people that weren't there. And I'm not saying that, oh, I'm superior. I'm not an old man trying to sail you young people. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, though, at that time, Star Wars was such a game changer in terms of what you could see on screen and its lived-in universe, from the verisimilitude to the story. Unbelievable. Empire Strikes Back plussed it. I saw Empire Strikes Back, as I've said on this channel a million times, 26 times in the theater. At the UA 150, 8th seat, left side, front row balcony. I sat there every single time I saw it. I expected, as somebody who loved Star Wars and Empire in the theater, I thought I was going to get, because I'd already read Lord of the Rings, I would get Return of the King. That Return of the Jedi would be that. I thought I was going to get a Lawrence of Arabia, Gone with the Wind, Apocalypse Now, epic. Because The Empire Strikes Back was a dark film, and in terms of world building, it led up to... When I saw the opening of Return of the Jedi, when you see the Tidarium shuttle, it wasn't the Tidarium, but the shuttle going, nothing about Return of the Jedi I thought worked at all. I mean, there were scenes I liked. The rescue of Han Solo is a side story. Why we're spending 20 minutes, literally the galaxy. We've set up this incredible conflict, and we open the movie with a side story that lasts 20 minutes. The end with the Emperor in the throne room with Vader and Luke is great. The rest of the movie is a wash, inconsequential. I wanted a Return of the King level fucking epic. That's what was teed up from Empire. And what we got was a goof. And I understand George Lucas, who never, by the way, never really got Star Wars. I know he created it, but he didn't like Empire Strikes Back. If you read Rinsler's book, he didn't enjoy it at all, and he thought, "Oh, I was making these movies for kids." No. That might have been your intention, but culturally that's not what happened. You captured the world's imagination, and Empire Strikes Back was not a kids movie. And then you go from a film that was pretty serious. It had humor in it, but it was about subterfuge, backstabbing, the loss of faith, how the world is not how you thought it was going to be. And then you open up with Jabba the Hutt and Max Rebo and the Rebo Band and Cy Snoodles singing Lopty Neck. This is not what I wanted. And what I would have done is something far more serious. And I would have done something epic and have grandeur. It would have been the Godfather 2 of Star Wars movies. I would have had Vader finding out, realizing we didn't know anything. You have to understand, the sequels, the prequels, none of that shit existed. All we had was Star Wars and Empire, and we had, I think we had the Splinter of the Mind's Eye, we had Marvel Comics, and Lando Calrissian at Star's End. I don't think Lando Calrissian and the Mind Harp of Sharu or the Flame Winds of Ocean had been published yet. So we had very little Star Wars, except the movies. That was it. We didn't even have the Droids cartoon series. We didn't have Caravan of Courage. None of that existed. We had Star Wars, Empire, and basically the Empire, Splinter of the Mind's Eye. I expected an epic film where the stakes were high. Leia would have been turned to the dark side. Han Solo would have had to kill her. We would have seen Coruscant. We would have seen the Jedi Temple. We would have seen... It should have been gigantic in scope. I understand what Lucas wanted to do. I got his metaphor with the Ewoks, but I'm like, dude, bro, after Empire, that's what you're going to show us? You're going to trivialize here's another problem. You, George Lucas, you were going to originally go to fucking Vietnam and shoot Apocalypse Now yourself. But Apocalypse Now came out a year before Empire Strikes Back, and then you gave us Return of the Jedi? I wanted the Apocalypse Now going up the fucking river. Give me that. That's what I wanted, if that makes any sense. So, Joshua Gonzalez says, have you ever thought of an ex, but not romantically? It's been a few years and you just want to know if they're okay because they were good people? Dude, every day. Every day. I have a lot of exes. You know what's funny? I probably am... I don't think that there's a woman that I was involved with for any length of time that I ever don't love. That I had an extraordinary string of extraordinary girlfriends. And some of them I've never stopped being in love with. And it never goes away. Big Sauce sends in a super chat and says, to be supportive, thank you for bringing joy to my days. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thomas Benny I can't see. Thomas Beniti. There we go. Says, I love True Noir. The production value is best in class. I hope you get to make sequels. That's the way to my heart. You know what? Thank you so much. I mean, True Noir, to me, it's the only thing in my life ever that I've made that I feel truly represents what I think is good in terms of cast, in terms of writing. I was given the great gift of Max Allan Collins' script. And I got to produce it with Mike McDonald, who created all of the audioscapes. I got to do something exactly how I wanted to do it. I hope it will lead to a film. I still want to make a movie because I hope to achieve that goal with a film. I've only directed one movie, but that True Noir is, in my mind, if you want to look at like, okay, Rob, you talk a good game, boy, but the game is finished. Now you die. That's my tall man from Phantasm. True Noir is it. If you want to look at something that I would... Rob, you criticize everything. Well, yeah, you know what? Okay, here's something. I always criticize Star Trek. The Khan audio drama, which I actually really like, written by Kirsten Beyer, who works on the show, and, of course, one of my very favorite Star Trek novelists, who wrote, like, the Destiny trilogy. David Mack, who wrote the Mirror Universe duology. He's an incredible Star Trek writer, understands canon. Now, I understand all these guys have to curry favor with the powers that be, but modern Trek hasn't even come close to surpassing what David Mack has written in his books. But David Mack and Kirsten Beyer came up with the script for Star Trek Khan. Now, I would say that I would take that miniseries and True Noir, even though they have nothing to do with each other, but if you put them together, who would you want to make the next Star Trek audio drama? Just asking. But I appreciate you saying that. Cole Stayer sends in that's a very generous super chat. Amazing. Thank you so much. Wait, I know who you are. I'm not ghosting you. Since you've been ghosting me, I'm forced to ask here, text me a schedule to appear on your show. Zephyr Chan, all the way from Hong Kong. You're going to come on my show. I love her. Zephyr Chan is an incredible woman, and she's bribing me. But you can come on my show. You can come on my show anytime you want. But send me more of those pictures. Just kidding. Kenneth Colton says he's been a member for 38 months. He says $30 monthly residuals, Rob. Resident Evil 9 on the PS5 Pro. I have to tell you, the console gamer, I was watching his review of the new Resident Evil 9 today. He was digging it, and he was throttling between first person and third person. What do you guys think? If you play Resident Evil 9, are you a third person player, or do you like that new first? Well, it's not new, but do you like the first person thing? What do you like? Royston Bailey says, if you were to produce a post-Dominion War Trek show, what would you have as the premise, and who would the main characters be? Okay, this is a tough question because as a Star Trek novel reader, they wrote 20 years of novels post-Dominion War. And they dealt with everything. Everything. Deep Space Nine was destroyed and rebuilt. They have a new version of Deep Space Nine. I mean, the thing is, and it was very holistic. It dealt with the entire Alpha Quadrant and more. So everything that I would tell you would probably be tainted by that. But I would say that the idea, here's what I would say. And as people know, Jeffrey Thorne and I and Chris McQuarrie and Brian Singer talked about an idea. I'd come up with this idea right after Enterprise ended that I called Star Trek Federation, that I pitched to Brian Singer and Chris McQuarrie at a sushi dinner in Seattle during the post-production of Superman Returns. In Madison Park, where my grandparents lived, Chris McQuarrie lived there too. And my idea was this. It took place 1,000 years in Star Trek's future. And the Federation was a mess. but not because of the burn, but because it was old and people had become complacent. And oh, by the way, in our premise, the Vulcans and Romulans had been reunited. The Ferengi had changed, the Bajorans had changed, the Klingons had become much more spiritual. Everything you've seen in modern Star Trek with Discovery was already addressed in our series pitch, which you can find online, Star Trek Federation. I'm not saying it's perfect, but Jeffrey Thorne came up with a good idea. I pitched him my idea. He had we were gonna refine that pitch. It was just a first draft pitch, and it never went anywhere. But they certainly ran with it in modern Star Trek. Am I angry? No. They ripped off Ursula K. Le Guin, so I shouldn't be at all mad that they stole our idea too. Which, by the way, they did, because it was out online. But yeah. But if I were to produce a post-Dominion War show, here's what I would. Here would be my premise. What happens to a civilization, a post-scarcity meritocracy that is based on the betterment of sentient beings? The great thing about the Star Trek universe is when you don't have to worry about wealth, it's all about the betterment of the self. If that's, and I believe that's what Star Trek was all about. If you're in that universe, what happens when that civilization, let's call it just the Federation is tested by an extinction event, the Dominion War? What happens when you've had to confront how you dealt with that? How does that civilization continue to be the utopian post-scarcity meritocracy that it is? How do you recover from that? How do you keep your system of government? How do you keep Starfleet? How do you keep Federation values in the face of what you've just gone through? That's why In the Pale Moonlight is such a great episode of Deep Space Nine and a great episode of Star Trek. Because what Deep Space Nine, a lot of people say, Deep Space Nine is so anti-Roddenberry. It's like, no. Star Trek Deep Space Nine is about what happens when the Roddenberry future has to confront an enemy that doesn't believe, that actually wants to wipe out that utopian post-scarcity meritocracy. Sorry, Steve Shives, but I can't stand it when people say Star Trek is so progressive and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. You know what? Here's the thing. You know what progressives don't believe in? Being great at what you do. And I would consider myself, I used to consider myself a left-leaning Democrat. I don't anymore, because I've realized that the idea of excellence is anathema to some people. And I'm like, no. Self-improvement in the quest to be the best person you can be is where we should all be at. That's how society moves forward. I am tired of excuses for being mediocre, starting with myself. I don't like it. I don't like it. Fuck you. Get over it. I mean, come on. People survived World War II and they moved on with their lives. You've had nothing in your life that was a big problem. I mean, if you've grown up in America and my trauma, it's so terrible. Give me a break. Don't even come at me up. You've not felt real hardship. Now, that's not to say people have had real hardship in their lives. But you know what? You have to look at hardship at scale. And the fact is, I would have liked to have seen, and what I would have done with a post-Deep Space Nine show, is what happens when the abyss has looked into you. That's what I would have liked to have seen, is how do you, or how does a Star Trek series, how does Star Trek characters, and the thing is, they know that like Benjamin Sisko knows what he did is wrong. He sanctioned murder. Now he knows that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. Very Star Trekian, but he still did it. So how does him being haunted by his decision manifest, and yet he still has to lead people? And he still has, obviously he didn't because of what happened in the fire caves, but use that as a metaphor. I mean, what happens when the Voyager comes back to Earth and you find out with Catherine Janeway and everything that happened to them? How do they get through that? And I would have liked to have seen, how does a civilization that has forgotten its core values after compromising them in an existential war, how do they continue to keep and hold on to their core values without falling into oblivion? That's kind of what I was thinking about doing with the Federation in the Star Trek Federation. What happens when the Federation gets old and people in the Federation change? You know, and the thing is, modern Star Trek just blows shit up. Let's blow up look, here's my problem with modern Star Trek. They blow up a planet and they think that the Klingon Empire, they have nowhere to go, as if there's only one planet in the Klingon Empire. I mean, the imagination on display with modern Star Trek is exactly 0%. Nobody there ever stops to think, okay, you know, I wrote something on my Facebook page today, and I can give you an example of what I think is wrong with Starfleet Academy. It's very simple. Here's what I wrote on my Facebook page. Here's my direct and brief explanation of why Star Trek Starfleet Academy simply doesn't work. Starfleet Academy falters at a foundational level because it never convincingly defines how the Academy actually functions as an institution. The series gestures at training, discipline, and evaluation, but it fails to articulate a coherent curriculum, command structure, or standards of advancement. Without a clear pedagogical framework, what cadets study, how they're tested, what constitutes excellence versus failure, the audience lacks any metric for tracking character growth. As a result, dramatic stakes flatten. If we don't understand the rules of the system, we can't judge whether anyone is succeeding, struggling, or merely coasting through an undefined process. Starfleet Academy seems more like therapy than a school. And someone came back at me and talked about the philosophy of Star Trek. I'm like, look, man, you know, this is a very specific idea. Starfleet Academy. All the audience understands what it's like to go to school. And if you look at if you look at previous shows that deal with school, one of my favorites recently, Friday Night Lights, the TV series, which I love. Coach Taylor and his wife, they represent the best of Starfleet. Those students were in school. It shows, I mean, in the case of Friday Night Lights, you have football to show. How does a team work? How does Starfleet work? And you got to see what happens when people move through their high school career and then matriculated. We have so many examples. Officer and Gentleman, the Alan Parker's Fame, the Paper Chase, Dead Poets Society. You know, there's so many things. What I want to see is, and by the way, I didn't ask anyone to make a Starfleet Academy show. If you're going to make a show called Starfleet Academy, it better be about Starfleet Academy. You better show me every single person we've ever met who was in Starfleet went to Starfleet Academy. We didn't really hear much about it in the original series. If you watch Shore Leave, we meet Finnegan, the bully Kirk had to deal with in the original, when he was originally at the Academy. His good friend talks about how he was a bookish guy, you know, walking around. And then, of course, in Next Generation, coming of age from the first season, you see Wesley undergo a test he doesn't know is a test. In the 5th season of Next Generation, we see the First Duty. In Deep Space Nine, we have Nog, and we see a lot more cadets. It was already defined. Starfleet Academy, by definition, according to what Alex Kurtzman says, I want to do X-Men First Class and I want to do Harry Potter. So what you don't want to do, and what you haven't wanted to do since you started writing Star Trek Swill in 2009, is Star Trek. I mean, I don't understand. Making a Starfleet Academy series in the context of the Star Trek universe should be a no-brainer. But they don't want to make Star Trek. By the showrunner's definition, by Alex Kurtzman's definition, I want to do X-Men First Class meets Harry Potter. Then go do something else. Why do Star Trek? Why would you do that? Royston Bailey says you should check out some Trek Yards reviews of Starfleet Academy. I love the Trek Yards guys. I have not watched their reviews of Starfleet Academy. You know, I only watch a few. And I just can't take it. And then I watch it myself, and I'm like, I can't even go there. Royston Bailey says Deep Space Nine deconstructed Roddenberry's vision like Unforgiven did with the Western. 100%. Kurtzman denigrates Roddenberry's version. I totally agree. But the thing is, I don't think that Deep Space Nine deconstructs Roddenberry's version. As my friend Alvaro says, Deep Space Nine tests Roddenberry's version. Deep Space Nine is the crucible that Star Trek had to traverse and to see what would happen on the other end. Could our characters that we've grown to love, could people from that universe, would an extinction level event, the Dominion War, destroy them? Or could they come out on the other side of that crucible and have learned something or survived? That's kind of what it was, at least to me. But I like what you're saying about deconstructed the Roddenberry's vision like Unforgiven. I like that. B Things says the writers of Starfleet Academy seem like they haven't even watched Legally Blonde. You're not wrong. You are not wrong. Let me see if anybody sent in any tips, and they did. Joe D1701 says, as a fellow child born in 67, you must have been a fan of the Micronauts toy line. Oh my God. For a brief moment in time, it was the biggest selling toy in the world. Why haven't we seen any attempt to make a movie with this IP? Seems like a missed opportunity. I can't reach it because it's stacked. I have the Micronauts Marvel comic. For those of you who don't know, the Micronauts, Mego brought the Micronauts, Mego who made the 8-inch World's Greatest Superhero figures and Wizard of Oz, and they made the original Fonz figure. They had all the licenses except Star Wars. They couldn't get that. But they brought over a Japanese toy line. I think it was Micro Man. But they brought over a Japanese toy line in the 70s called Micronauts. And Micronauts had figures basically the same size as Star Wars figures with much better articulation. But they were all like, you could take them all apart and combine them. And there was like all these different characters. There was Space Glider. There was Time Traveler. One of my favorites was Pharoid, who came in a sarcophagus. And then there was a Croyer, like the villain. And then they made all these cool vehicles. You know, the original line had like Biotron, which is this robot. Look up Micronauts. Awesome. And they have the Space Cruiser, and you could get various things like from JCPenney's that you couldn't get at Sears. They were an awesome, awesome toy line. The only problem with playing with Micronauts is there were so many little pieces, you didn't want to lose anything, but it was an amazing thing. And you know, I think the problem with Micronauts as an IP, it was pre-animated series. And while there was the Marvel Comics and Michael Golden drew that comic, some of it in the early years was good. But then every time they came up with a new line and they had some domestically, they would change it. They would sometimes give you more animals and things would change, and Baron Karza and all that. So it didn't really know what it was. And we as kids, it was cool. But even I liked the first iteration of Micronauts, but then it kind of got a little crazier. So there was no mythology there. Even if you read the comics, the mythology doesn't hold up, which is probably why it didn't catch on the way it should have. Tony Reyes sends in a tip and says, instead of deporting people, just build space colonies. Call them Space Noids and start with the Principality of Xeon. I love Tony Reyes. If we're going to argue about borders, we might as well commit to full Mobile Suit Gundam lore at this point. You know, I got to tell you, I don't know how much you people know about Mobile Suit Gundam. Mobile Suit Gundam started in 1979, and it's great. I love Mobile Suit Gundam. It started out as a series, then it was a failed series, and then they turned it into these 3 movies, and then they've gone from there, and now it's 2026 and we're still getting mobile suits. But what, so if you don't know, I can't reach anything Mobile Suit Gundam related, but Amara Ray, and there's so many great characters. But the mobile suits, my favorite mobile suit is the V Gundam RX 93. Now, if you know anything about it, I did get this die cast. I think it's called metal. I don't even know. Whatever metal. It was ridiculously expensive. I shouldn't have bought it, but I did. With all the accessories. If you like Gunpla, like I can't even get it. If you don't know what Gunpla is, you got to look it up. It's a long time. But my favorite mobile suit is not Metal Structure. Is it Metal Structure? My Metal Structure RX-93 from V Gundam and Char's Counterattack. The greatest perfect grade or perfect grade extreme, what's it called? Of the RX-93 was just released. It's the greatest thing ever. People are going, what are you even talking about? Anyway, you'll figure it out. Miss 50 in Still Metal says, Rob, will True Noir be available on CD and Blu-ray very soon to the public? Yes. And what are your favorite martial arts and kung fu movies? Ooh, you know what? This is terrible to say, but in terms of recent movies, The Raid. The Raid is probably my favorite kung fu movie in the modern age. But my problem is, I've been going through, I don't even remember the names of all of my favorite kung fu movies. You know, like Zoo Warriors of the Magic Mountain, you know, with John Carpenter based Big Trouble in Little China on. So many of the Shaw Brothers titles, they get mixed up in my head. I have Shaw Brothers Volume 4 coming, but because they have so many similar titles. But, you know, I mean, I grew up watching I loved Enter the Dragon, Game of Death, but those are so cliche. I mean, I'm more interested in we are living in a golden age of getting martial arts movies, and it's like watching them for the first time because I saw so many on TV that I didn't know. I mean, it's funny because I don't think like Jackie Chan, I don't consider those martial arts movies as much as I consider them stunt movies. But there's a lot of martial arts movies and swordplay movies and samurai movies like I love, but they're not really martial. I wouldn't consider the Lone Wolf and Cub movies martial arts movies. You know, they're samurai movies, which are different. So that's a tough one. I would need to sit down and actually do a well-researched list so I could tell you which martial arts movies are my favorites. That's something, and I'll do that because you pop up at night, so I'll have it ready. Fred says, I watched Epic, the Elvis in concert IMAX movie. Do yourself a favor and watch it on the biggest screen possible with a great sound system. Forget about the caricature of Elvis. At that point in time, he was the most electric performer, huge charisma and energy. Oh, I'm a huge Elvis fan. And, I've been watching Baz Luhrmann talking about, he thought he just discovered some footage. He had no idea he found all of that stuff, and he was able to make the movie that he made. I haven't seen it yet, but everybody tells me it's great. So I need to go see that. Jason Webster says, I've seen 408 Korean dramas since 2020, and every single one is way, way better than Kurtzman Trek. You know what? I don't disbelieve you. I think you're probably correct about that. I am surprised. Every episode, especially of Starfleet Academy, I ask myself, what is this about? Where are we going with this? I mean, and I haven't yet. I feel that, look, people have gotten so used to because we don't read anymore. They don't know the difference between good stories and bad stories. I feel that's true about a lot of our civilization. Is people are not discerning because they haven't watched enough of things to understand what makes them good or bad. And I also see a lot of people who just generically like Star Trek. They don't point a critical eye. They think of what Star Trek is doing. If Star Trek is doing something, you feel representation and all, that's fine. That's good. But that doesn't make it a good story. And I'm interested in seeing a good story. And there's been hundreds and hundreds of great Star Trek episodes to look back on and go, okay, this is kind of what we should do. And to me, one of the defining Starfleet Academy stories is the first duty. As a matter of fact, I haven't seen anything that comes close to that 5th season Next Generation episode. Not close. But Bo Create says, good Trek snuck in ideas like love, justice, or hope, which landed quietly, like a friend slipping you advice over a drink instead of a lecture. I love that. That's what a great way to put it. Nicely done. Richard Fairbanks, is that Fairbanks? Richard Fairbanks sends in a $20 super chat and says, I loved True Noir. Have just finished listening to it. Wonderfully immersive world building. Thanks for reading my letter in search of Bodark. Oh, that was a great letter. In search of Bodarks on your previous Robservations, which, by the way, disappeared. It disappeared. It somehow didn't upload correctly, which is not my fault. I read all those great letters, and I'm like, how does the live stream disappear? It disappeared. I don't know why. In search of Bodarks on your previous Robservations episode, all the best from England. Well, first of all, it makes me so. First of all, that letter was great. Thank you for writing it. I've got letters to read that I'm not going to read tonight, but I will read them. Great letters from people. So thank you all. Yeah, that was a great letter. But that show, I'm sorry, it disappeared. I really appreciate it. If you want to write me a letter, right down there, rmburnett1701@gmail.com, and please put in the subject line Robservations and the subject of your letter. Webby93 says, hey, Rob, I lost my dad earlier this year. I'm very sorry to hear that. And he really enjoyed your videos. So I just wanted to say thanks for the years of content and the conversations I got to have with him about topics you discuss. Well, Webby, first of all, I'm very sorry about losing your father. It's always a tough thing. I lost my father in 2006, and it was rough to not have him. But I'm glad. That's wild. He watched his show. I'm glad you guys got something out of it. Look, to spark conversations is the very essence of what I hope to do here, what I've always hoped to do here. So to hear that you guys did that, thank you very much. It means a lot, and I am truly sorry for your loss. DBZZ Now sends in another $20 super chat and says, not to get too political, but what are your thoughts on the Iran strikes? I think a large portion of Americans believe Iran doesn't have a chain of command. I'm quite worried of what a cornered nation might resort to. Look, I am not a fan of war in any way, shape, or form. However, our planet, we have to start making some really tough decisions. The Islamic Republic of Iran, which is what the name of the country is, the Islamic Republic of Iran, their way of life and what they believe in, they are predominantly Shia Muslims. The Persian people are not necessarily they were not an Islamic nation until the leftists and the Islamists took over the country in 1979. And they have been supporters of terror throughout the region for the last 45 years. And I think they needed that regime needed to go away. Unfortunately, what has happened is all of the discourse. I mean, it has been, look, Israel has been fighting a war against Iranian proxies since 1979. You have the Houthis, you have Hezbollah, you have so many other what happened in Gaza, and all that needs to end. It all needs to end, and it's not about colonization. It's not about anything other than a way of life where, first of all, gender apartheid. The Islamic Republic, first and foremost, believes in the subjugation of women. Women are second-class citizens. I don't know why anyone in the West would ever support an Islamic regime, ever, for that one reason. Let's just stop there. Start and stop with the treatment of women. Women can't go to school. Women can't show their hair. Women can't be out in public. The laws that when you're married, you as a woman have to be subjugated to the whims of your husband. I mean, I don't know why anyone in the West, it has nothing to do with colonization. It has to do with a belief system that is entirely incompatible with us in the West. And you can't pick and choose from Islam. You know, the Quran and the Hadiths, it's all right there. It's all right there. The people that choose to not, deal with that, the Islamic Republic, they were fundamentalist Islamists. And I think that the world will be better off without that regime in place. That said, now what? Does anyone have a plan? Does anyone have a plan if you want to bring back, the new Shah of Iran? How's that all going to work? I feel like everything is so haphazard these days. It's all willy-nilly, and no one thinks about... It's kind of like if you decide, I want to tear down the east wing of the White House and build a ballroom. Okay. Where's the plan? Whenever anybody makes a building of any kind, you have plans. You have an architectural firm that you talk to. You have a designer. They've looked at the plans. You have a budget. The plans are approved. And then you decide when you're going to start construction. This administration, the east wing of the White House, is still a pile of rubble. This is my problem. However your politics are, whatever you believe and whoever you believe in, the fact is the east wing of the White House is still a pile. Well, actually, the pile of rubble is taken away. It no longer exists. The east wing of the White House was taken down without a plan to rebuild it. There's an idea. Maybe we'll get around to it. But how do you tear down something and not start construction right away? I feel that our entire country on every level is that. We're going to stop this and do that. And it doesn't matter what your politics is. Everyone knows who's ever built anything, whether it's a shed in the backyard or whether it's a house. There is one way to build things. One way when you're talking about architecture. And you'd think that somebody who's owned architecture and owned real estate would understand this. And to tear down a third of our White House and to not have it up or not have a plan or not have something we can all look at, that is what I fear will happen to Iran. We have a great opportunity because the Persian people are a great people. And liberated from Islamic fundamentalism, the people of Iran will flourish. That will be an incredible country. They'll also be an incredible ally of Israel, the only democracy in the region. For all the things that people say, mostly because they've never been to Israel, I encourage everybody to go to Israel and see for yourself. Because the way Israel has been painted, it's been a great smear job. But trust me, if you haven't gone to Tel Aviv, which is one of the world's great cities, and you haven't seen Jerusalem, and you haven't seen how Israel actually works, it's a pretty great place. But no one's been there. So it's easy to demonize, which, John Jim 22 says, Rob, have you read the Sun Eater book series no, I have not, by Christopher Ruchico? I think it's going to be the next great science fiction fantasy IP. Well, I love the title, Sun Eater. That's kind of like what the astrophage is in Project Hail Mary, but I like that. DBZZ now says, my problem with it is that America itself caused this problem when they inserted the previous government in the 1960s. Additionally, a military dictatorship will be the most likely replacement. I agree. American meddling, we have a lot to answer for. But on the other hand, hopefully we can do it without a loss of life. We'll see what happens. I don't know enough about it. I've been following the news today. But it's been disconcerting, certainly. Let's see. Okay, we're good. We're caught up. Now, what I wanted to say, I called this a confessional, this episode. And what I wanted to confess and what I wanted to say is that it's increasingly difficult to do this channel, to be on YouTube. It's hard talking about entertainment and Star Trek and Flights of Fancy when our world is changing in a very rapid pace. And all of the things that I'm loving, whether it's Star Trek, whether it's movies, whether it's TV, comics, music, physical media, it's increasingly more difficult to even care about all that stuff when we look at the onslaught of what we're seeing in terms of our culture, in terms of real life, in terms of not just politics, but where AI is going to take us, where we're at, I mean, I feel like we're all losing our minds. I feel like our tenuous grip on reality is slipping further and further away. And it seems increasingly more difficult to talk about the things that I enjoy. But here's the thing. I feel that all the things that I've loved, movies, comic books, novels, music, all of those things, all of those products of passion and thought, were about people trying to explore our world through their art, whether it was music or comics or movies or whatever. And they were trying to make sense of this maelstrom that we live in 24/7. That's why I still think it's important. One of my favorite writers, Dan Simmons, passed away. He wrote a number of my favorite books, Carrying Comfort, which is a tremendous horror novel, Song of Kali, The Hyperion Cantos, The Terror. I have 2 shelves of his books. Entropy's Bed at Midnight, which is a short story. Prayers to Broken Stones. He passed away from a stroke at 77. I've been reading him for 40 years. The first time I ever read him was in Twilight Zone magazine. He was in a class in Colorado that Harlan Ellison taught, and he wrote a story called The River Styx Runs Upstream. And they published that in Twilight Zone magazine, and I read it, and I was blown away by it. Blown away by his writing. He passed away. A lot of people said he got radicalized. He had an accident where he got hit in the back of the head with a kayak, and after 9/11, he was never the same, and people thought he became an angry, staunch Republican or whatever. I understand, but that, to me, doesn't take away from his great triumphs. The Terror, Ilios, or not Ilios. I'm thinking For All Mankind. Ilium and Olympos. If you want to read 2 wacky science fiction novels that tie in with Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, read Dan Simmons' Ilium and Olympos. Ilium's a little better and they get a little weird, but wow, what a rad retelling of Homer's epic of the Iliad and the Odyssey. But check it out. But, anyway, shout out to Dan Simmons. I will miss him and his books. But I think all of this still matters because, as I was pointing out, movies and pop culture used to, they were a great talking point in our culture. And you'd see a movie like when Holocaust was on TV or when Roots was on TV. These were both shows that nowadays, Roots is so woke. No, Roots was, Mr. Haley's book could be dubious of origin, but as a piece of entertainment, it was very enlightening, and it taught America so much about race relations and what slavery meant. So both Roots and Holocaust, which came out in just a couple of years with each other, were both shows that dealt with the racial plight of people in world history, and they were very unifying, and everybody watched them, and everybody watched Roots when it came out. Again, something that came out when I was in the 4th grade in 1976, 77. Everybody watched that show. And that book was a bestseller. People talked about it. No one got angry. No one would say, well, that's just woke, Rob. It's about Africans and slaves. No, it was historical. And the journey that LeVar Burton as Kunta Kinte went on was a huge, it became burned into your psyche. It didn't matter if I was 10 or my grandparents were watching Roots, and we'd have these conversations about it. That's what pop culture used to do. It used to unify our civilization. And all of these movies, they weren't real history, but they did become collective parts of our society, the fabric of our society. Movies don't do that anymore because movies really aren't about sometimes you'll get a movie like Hamnet, which is a fantastical film, and I'm going to drop an episode of Designing Hollywood with the cinematographer and production designer on Monday. Lovely movie, but they don't speak to civilization the way the movies used to do it a long time ago. And that's what we're missing, because movies have just become entertainment when before these were stories that mattered. And look, I want to see Doomsday as much as the next guy, and I can't wait to see Project Hail Mary. But the thing about Project Hail Mary, even though it's a delicious science fiction story, it's about 2 very disparate individuals that, despite their differences, learn to work to achieve a goal. It's a great message for today, like any great science fiction show is. I and I can't wait to see it. Blocked by Rob says, bomb, 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 Iran, bomb, 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 Iran, rockin' and a rollin', artillery exploding, bomb, Iran. That was terrible singing. This undocumented attack is planned out by a former steak salesman. You forgot to mention Trump also sold steaks. Love you, Rob. Hey, look. Donald Trump's president of the United States. He's POTUS. Look, what's amazing to me is where were the marches for the people that were slaughtered in the streets? It'll all come out. Everyone's screaming and yelling and talking about how we bombed a girls' school. Or was it a malfunctioning Iranian weapon? Why would we target that school? Well, it was on an IRGC base, but we'll see. Let things all play out and see where they land. I mean, I don't know. I would prefer not to be at war. I think the loss of any human being is a loss for all of us. Clarence Maxwell said, only 50 characters allowed for a $1.99 super chat. Is that true? I have no idea. That is not my doing, Clarence Maxwell. As far as I'm concerned, you can say whatever you want. That's why I leave the letters open. Send me a letter for free, and I'll read it as long as they might be. I've got a couple of banger letters to read this week, so I will read them. We're going to go into the Ides of March with lots of interesting commentary. So, yeah. A Silly Goose says, what was the last album you listened to, start to finish, uninterrupted? For me, it was Necropalace by Worm. Banger of an album, by the way. Okay, I'll tell you exactly what the album was. The last album I listened to from beginning to end was Frankie Goes to Hollywood's Welcome to the Pleasure Dome. And you might say, well, Rob, that album came out 42 years ago. Yes, but Super Deluxe Edition released the Dolby Atmos remix version of the album as their 50th release a couple months ago. And when I got it, I ran to my home theater system and played it and listened to the entire album, including the new 30-minute is it the Supernova? What's it called? The 30-minute version of Welcome to the Pleasure Dome. That was the last album I listened to from beginning to end. Super Deluxe Edition. And I just ordered Tears for Fears. They're repressing The Hurting, which, by the way, The Hurting, Tears for Fears, The Hurting, for all of you goth nuts out there, is a great goth album. A lot of people say, what? Tears for Fears isn't a goth band? The Hurting is a great goth album. I will die on this hill. It's not Songs from the Big Chair. It's their first album, The Hurting. Mad World. All around me are from... Come on. You know it. You know the remake for Donnie Darko, but I'm talking about The Hurting, Tears for Fears. It's a great goth record. And I can't wait to get it in Dolby Atmos. But so Super Deluxe Edition is this company that's remixing all of these albums. You get the original 2-channel stereo mix, but they have different remixes, and they're remixing these albums in Dolby Atmos. They go back and they get the stems. I mean, they did Roxy Music's Avalon. They did Brian Ferry's Boys and Girls. They did Wham's albums. I mean, they're insane. And some of them I don't get, but they've done a lot of great stuff. They're doing Who albums, Peter Gabriel albums. Good stuff, man. They did Duran Duran's Dance Macabre. That was like an original. They put that out. But go to superdeluxeedition.com or SDE.com. Check it out. If you like 80s music and you like music of that era, I highly recommend any of their discs. If you can't get them, they're hard to get because they sell out. So if you want to get their repress of The Hurting, I think it's available for like another 15 days. Check it out. Worth getting. DBZZ says, have you ever read the lit RPG fantasy genre? If not, I recommend Dungeon Crawler Carl book series. Very fun fusion of fantasy and game mechanics. That's interesting. I have not. I should delve into that. Dungeon Crawler Carl. I like that. Anyway, I don't know. You know what? I don't know how much of a confessional this episode has been. I wanted to come out here and confess about all these things, but hey, I got so sidetracked. This was truly a free-for-all, a free-form Robservations episode. I'm going to end this episode. I want to thank you for going on this journey with me tonight live. I got to say, it's been a rough week. It's been a rough, my personal life in terms of my living situation is precarious. You know, I thought I would live in this house forever. Probably not. We might lose this house. I mean, hopefully we'll sell it. That's why we have open houses, and that has been really rough. You know, still losing my sister back in October, dealing with my mom, dealing with the world at large, dealing with Paramount taking over Warner Brothers, which I think is, I mean, Paramount can't even do Paramount very well. What are they going to do? The thing is, Warner Brothers is monumentally better than Paramount. And you have the people at Paramount that are kind of small-minded, and they're doing it for political reasons, taking over a studio that they have no business running, that's doing just fine. And they got The Bride coming out, and you're all going to love it. And I'm sorry. I mean, I've never met David Ellison. I certainly don't know Larry. But let Warner Brothers be Warner Brothers. They don't need to be taken over by an inferior studio that has an inferior slate, that their creators, I mean, you know, come on, guys. I don't know what they're going to do. A Marty 25 says, missed my super chats. I don't know. I haven't seen any. Let's go back and look. Let's see if there are any there. I don't see any. Oh, A Marty says, review for the Con audio drama. See, sometimes people send in super chats and they don't pop up. I liked it. Look, I'm going to be honest. You know, I talked to David Mack. I have an interview with him that I haven't dropped yet after he'd written that. I prefer, so the Con audio drama, there have been many iterations of stories that have told the story about what happened to Khan when he left Earth and was on SETI Alpha 5. I think I preferred, after all of them, I know David Mack had problems, I liked Nicholas Meyer's 3-night Khan event that they were going to do. I thought that was great. The Greg Cox Khan trilogy was pretty good. IDW did a comic series about Khan. They all have great things in their own right. My problem, I thought the audio drama, I didn't like the production of it very much. And I thought shoehorning new characters and Sulu into it as kind of a framing device, I understand why they did it. I don't think they needed to do that. But it was good. It was good. I would have done something different with it, but I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great. And that's not just because I did my own audio drama. So let me see if you sent in any more super chats. That one, sometimes when people send in super chats, they disappear. Here's another one. Rob, is there any hope for modern Trek? Also, sci-fi book recommendations, please. I loved True Noir. No, there is no hope for modern Trek. Look, you cannot have a group of people producing a show that has said that they want to use their show for messaging, which is what Alex Kurtzman has repeatedly said. I don't understand. If you're making a Star Trek show, don't tell me you want to make your Star Trek show like X-Men First Class and Harry Potter. Don't tell me like J.J. Abrams said, I never liked Star Trek, I want to make it more like Star Wars. Why are you working in that universe? Why are you doing that? There is no hope for modern Star Trek until you get people in there that are committed to making a Star Trek show. A Star Trek show where the stories come first. I feel like modern Star Trek, it's difficult to watch because there's so much virtue signaling and identity politics happening. And I'm not just saying that. I mean, it's god-awful. And as I said, you're making a Starfleet Academy show. And as somebody wrote on my post on Facebook, talked about philosophy of the original series. No. Here's the thing. With the original series, you understood that in Star Trek, you were on a starship going on adventures, and each allegorical science fiction action adventure would, in terms of whoever we were going to meet and interact with, it would have something to do, the aliens would have something to do with us, and we were teaching a story about humanity in a broad sense. They were parables. Starfleet Academy has given us a promise to show again, all of our characters, Starfleet Academy becomes a crucible that all these characters have to go through to be forged into something new. Well, what is that? We've been hearing about Starfleet Academy since the first season of Star Trek, early in the first season, back in 1966. Here's a show about Starfleet Academy, and we don't know what Starfleet Academy is. Like, is it 4 years? And what do you learn in those 4 years? Apparently, it's all just willy-nilly. So I'm saying, like, how do you understand where characters are at? Like, we all understood what it was like to be a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, and a senior in high school. So when you make a show like Friday Night Lights, we all have, the audience has the experience of knowing what it's like to go through that kind of an experience. With Starfleet Academy, they have done nothing to try and explain to us, what is Starfleet Academy? You know, in my mind, if I made a Starfleet Academy show, the professors themselves would have been both the protagonists and the antagonists of the show, and then we would have had our main characters. To bring a big bad into a Starfleet Academy series and not have him be like Professor Kingsfield in The Paper Chase, look up The Paper Chase, The Socratic Method, and just go to YouTube and look that up. And listen to what John Houseman says, and tell me if you couldn't have taken that guy, I mean, not that actor because he's no longer with us, but you take the Professor Kingsfield pattern and make that a Vulcan First Contact professor, and what you'd have to go through and how all the students feared him. That's your show. But this show, none of modern Star Trek has made any sense. They have never given us the burn. Have you ever heard of a more nonsensical galactic disaster that makes no sense at all? Just because they don't do the research. Oh, it's dilithium. Somebody heard dilithium and they're like, oh, what if it all blew up? First of all, how does dilithium blow up? It's a crystal. Now, they don't even get into the fact that there were matter-antimatter reactions. You use dilithium to create warp fields. And they're like, well, it blew up all the ships. Why? Because some kid was genetically tied. None of it makes any sense. I'm watching this going, this is ridiculous gobbledygook. And there's some people that go, well, Rob, why can you not believe in the burn, but you can believe in Q? Well, because the gods, characters that are gods, have been in our fiction for thousands of years. So I can believe in a god come down from Mount Olympus. I can believe Q is Loki, the god of mischief, or whatever. This is not hard. And so when people go, well, how can you believe in Q, but you can't believe in the burn? Because the burn compounds ridiculous ideas into one thing that none of them make any sense at all. At all. That's why you can't believe in the burn. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. You wanted a way to, so nobody could traverse the galaxy so you get rid of FTL drives? Okay, fine. I'll buy that. But don't tell me somebody has a genetic connection to a mineral that they scream out and all the dilithium blows up. It was so dumb. Like, whoever came up with that never read a science fiction novel in their fucking lives. Or went to a science class. And I'm like, that's bullshit. You're a fraudulent creator. The burn is fraudulent. Hate it all. Don't give that to me. A silly goose says, oh, wait, hang on. DBZZ now says, agendas work if it aligns with the socioeconomic themes of the setting it's placed in. Star Trek contradicting its world, its in-world politics is the issue. 100%. I totally agree with that. Brian O'Neill Singleton says the future of DC films if they start over again. Well, I mean, they're trying to build a new DC universe. They've got Supergirl coming out, Man of Steel or Man of Tomorrow is getting made, Clayface is getting made, so there's 3 movies. I don't think they'll start over again. I think that they'll continue to go on. We'll see. I mean, I don't think that Paramount, they can't even make their own movies. They should just let leave Warner Brothers alone. They want to go and cut their debt and whatever. Go ahead. You want to gut the studio? It's your funeral. Josh Haas says, have you read any of the DC Absolute Universe stuff? I have. I kind of like Absolute Batman. I mean, look, it seems to me there's a lot of really interesting ideas and stuff in those books. But it seems to me there's subversion. I mean, making Batman, like, what is he, 7 feet tall? a 7-foot tall monster and all that when he's physically that intimidating is, I mean, that's kind of heavy metal, and I it's cool and all, but I don't know if it really does right by the character. And Superman and Batman are kind of the same way. I mean, Superman and Wonder Woman, they're good, they're interesting, they're fun to read. I don't know how they're going to age, though. We shall see. A Silly Goose asks, thoughts on Red Carpet Massacre by Duran Duran. Wow, $50 super chat. That's amazing, dude. Thank you for that. I love Red Carpet Massacre. Justin Timberlake sang on that record. Red Carpet Massacre is great. I love that record. I actually have a slipcased version of it from the UK. Red Carpet Massacre. I love that record. And it's good. It's good. As a matter of fact, you make me. I have to go look. I have to go look this up. Hang on. Let me look this up. There's a great song. There's a song that I really like on this record. Oh, Box Full of Honey is a great song. I like Night Runner, Falling Down, Skin Divers, Last Man Stand. It's a great record, man. Now you make me want to go listen to this. It's good. Yeah, Justin Timberlake and I like this record. God, did it come out that long ago? 2007. That album, Red Carpet Massacre, is 19 years old. Man, I like Paper Gods a lot too. The Universe Alone, banger song. Stub McShave says, I'm shifting between watching this and watching the Vasa race. It's the longest cross-country skiing competition, 56 miles, and it's been done annually since 1922. It has its origin in the 16th century. It will probably be finished in 4 hours or so. That's amazing. Stub McShave is coming to us from Sweden. Wow, where did all of these super chats come from? All these super chats suddenly showed up. Gio Diaz says, I watched a 60 Minutes piece where the man brought an old plantation house only to discover that he was a descendant. Hang on. He was a descendant of, let's see, they've spread this out. Let me read this. He was a descendant of its slaves. Really? That's America. That's amazing. Wow. I don't know how I'd feel about that. Josh Haas says, damn the man, save the empire. I like that. Yes, indeed. Damn the man, save the empire. That's, let me see. That is 2023 Pierce the Veil, right? Heaven is a place hidden on your floor. I'm falling off the carpet edge and it's a long way down. I'll leave before the monuments of love. Now I'm buried underneath them. So baby, when I hold the dagger, we can all night long, but probably not. No one likes this anyway. Damn the man, save the empire. I got to go spin that. That's, of course, off the album Jaws of Life. So go get that. Let's see. Gosh, you guys keep saying things. B Thing says, hot take, Pulaski is better than Crusher, but I love Bone. So, hey, I thought Dr. Pulaski, we went and Diana Muldaur was in 2 episodes of the original series. Then we got her to be on our Next Generation documentaries. I thought she was great. She came in, Gates McFadden had been fired after the first season, thanks to Patrick Stewart. He got her back in this 3rd season, but Pulaski had to come into a very unforgiving environment. I thought she did a great job. I loved her take on the character. She's a delightful woman. DBZZ now says, becoming the most leveraged media conglomerate of all time is certainly a choice. The Ellisons are brain dead. You know what? We'll see what happens. I wish them the best. Please leave Warner Brothers intact. Silly Goose says, I watched The Three Body Problem on Netflix, and I've been reading The Forge of God, great low-key alien invasion stories. Let me tell you something about The Forge of God. Favorite alien invasion story. The Forge of God is the first part of a duology by Greg Bear, and the next book is Anvil of Stars. So, I've talked about this on the show. Anvil of Stars, if someone gave me a lot of money to make a 7-season science fiction TV series, I would adapt Anvil of Stars. You wouldn't need to do Forge of God, although Forge of God is good. And there's so much money against... They've been trying to make Forge of God and Anvil of Stars into movies forever. Mike Medavoy's company, might even Phoenix Pictures, might even still own the rights. But if you like Forge of God... So here's the story of Forge of God in a nutshell. There is a secret alien race that nobody knows who they are or where they come from, that in order to make sure that they are not dethroned as like the most powerful race in the galaxy, they have made von Neumann machines, self-replicating machines, and they find planets with emerging intelligent civilizations like ours. And before we can become spacefaring and challenge this race's supremacy, they drop these devices into the core of the planet, these devices that bore into the core of the planet, and they spin around. It takes a year, but when they spin down, they blow up the planet. And once they're deployed, nobody can stop them. And so the Forge of God is about all these disparate people that are contacted by a benevolent alien race. And they're trying to prevent the destruction of these races before they happen, but sometimes, a lot of the time, they don't get there in time. So once a planet's core is spinning down to destruction, this alien race does everything they can to save as much of the culture of the planet as possible. That's basically the gist of it. And what happens at Lycanes, I don't want to ruin it, but the Forge of God, the Forge of God is the first book. Anvil of Stars is a totally different kind of a book. But it's one of the most compelling. It's very, very compelling. That's all I'm going to say, because I don't want to ruin it. But one of my favorite alien invasion stories, and I would love to make this movie, is Robert Charles Wilson book The Harvest. I love The Harvest. I was talking about this to Alvaro the other day. I love Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle's Footfall is another great alien invasion story. Those are the two that come to mind. Those are two good ones. But I really like Three Body Problem. Tim underscore says, hi, Rob. Huge fan of yours. What would be your top 2 action thriller novel series of all time? Well, one of my favorites is the Joe Ledger series by Jonathan Mayberry. That begins with, is it Patient Zero? Is that what's the first? Just look up Joe Ledger. And then it became... It changed with book 10, but the Joe Ledger series is X-Files meets Tom Clancy. I love it. It's amazing. My 2 favorite, in terms of action series, I don't know if I'd call this an action series, but another favorite series of mine was Andrew Vaux's Burke, Vachss. Andrew Vaux, who sadly passed away. I loved his Burke novels, and Burke was a hard-boiled New York kind of detective, but all he did was he went after women that were being trafficked, women that were being abused. And those books are fucking dope. And I have to tell you, I have them all right over there in hardcover. And the last book, Another Life, I've never read because I know it's the last Burke novel and I didn't want it to end, so I never read it. And I got to go back and forth with Andrew Vaux about that. And I said, Andrew, I don't want to read your last book. And he said, I understand, before he passed away. Let's see. Kurtzman Trek is cultural hemorrhoids. Well, yeah, it's not good. It should be good. It should be profound. It's not good because it's written by people that aren't writing. As Kurtzman says, they want a message. And I'm like, well, who are you messaging? Like, why are we listening to your message? I don't think your show has really said much, to be honest. I understand everybody. I really do feel like modern Star Trek is written by people that have way too much therapy in their lives, and they've taken too many prescription drugs to make themselves feel better. So, yeah. Ghost Nom X4R says, good afternoon from Tokyo. Have you seen Kukuo? Oh, no, I haven't. Kukuo, which is nominated for this year's Oscars for Best Makeup. I have not seen that. Everybody tells me to watch it, and I really want to see it. I haven't seen it. I saw the trailer. It looks fantastic, but I haven't seen it. Josh Haas says, the Absolute line feels very 90s to me. I've read Batman and Superman so far. I like it as an Elseworlds big time. Absolute Martian Manhunter next. Oh, I didn't even know that was coming out. I need to read that. I'll read anything with Martian Manhunter. Gary Peters says, do you think Doom compares to Thanos in Avengers Doomsday? Will fans say that Doom was right? You know what's really funny? I heard something today. I heard that Marvel is wondering if somebody made an AI synopsis or something of the Doomsday script, because that's why all the leaks are getting out. I'm like, they got bigger problems than that. There's a whole cache of photos that I'm surprised haven't hit the web that they should be more worried about. But you know what? Even if you know the entire story of Doomsday, I don't think anyone is going to not love it. It's going to be a fucking hoot. Now, is it going to be... You know, it's different. It's different than Thanos. It's got... Doom is more of, I think, a traditional villain, but what's really going to be interesting is to see how Doomsday leads into and what they do with Secret Wars. I think Doomsday, from what I know, and let's just say I know, I could see everything. I think Doomsday is going to be a banger. I already think it's going to be a banger. I can't wait to see it. And I think that if you want to know the tone of the movie, those 4 trailers that they released at the end of the year are very consistent in terms of what that story, how it's going to feel. There's a lot of humor. I mean, from what I know about it, there's things that haven't leaked. There's just this brief little, not that I know, but there's a brief little exchange about Scott Lang talking about how much he likes Shang-Chi. I like what you did in New York. I don't know if that's going to make the movie, but I just thought that was funny. I liked it. It was good. We'll see. I think Doomsday is great. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be great fun. I think they know exactly what they're going to do. And the great thing is they've had time. They're going to probably do reshoots, of course, and it'll be as iterative. You know, they can edit the movies together. They see what they need. The Russo brothers and Marvel haven't lost. They haven't missed. You know, you've got Winter Soldier, Civil War, in Endgame, and Infinity War. Those are 4 bangers. And Doomsday is going to be their piece de resistance leading into Secret Wars. So, yeah. Billy D. Shillem says Warner Archive seems like a great R&D expense. I love Warner Archive. I do too. George Feltenstein's one of the best in the business. I really hope that this does not affect them at all. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, Warner Archive, they are going back into Warner's catalogs and they're restoring all of these films into HD that might have been lost forever. So let's do that. Brian Singleton. Brian O'Neill Singleton. Wouldn't it be wonderful if Warner Brothers did a cinematic universe with The Shadow, The Question, The Phantom, and Doc Savage? Could it work? Who would you cast? Oh my God, that's such a big question. Well, I think it could work. I mean, in terms of modern casting, you've got to have Dwayne Johnson play Doc Savage. I mean, is there anybody else? But the others, I don't know. The Phantom, The Question, that's a tough one. I have to think about that. But I would like that. Jurassic Joey says, as always, where the fuck is our 4K Fantasia and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Mary Poppins? It is ridiculous to me that we do not have Mary Poppins, 20,000 Leagues, or Fantasia. Why don't we have Fantasia with a Dolby Atmos mix? That'd be amazing. You know why? The people at Disney today don't even know what Fantasia fucking is, much less the fact that 20,000 Leagues represented the pinnacle of Walt Disney's and Mary Poppins as well, live action filmmaking. You know, it's funny. I was watching. Oh, it's not funny, but 20,000 Leagues is on. I think it was actually on Apple, or it was on Hulu. It was something I was watching. I don't know if I was watching The Beauty, which, by the way, The Beauty episodes 8 and 9. What a disappointment. Maybe it was Hulu because I was watching Paradise episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Paradise season 2. Fuck yeah, Shailene Woodley, I love you. Didn't expect that. Good stuff. B Thing says, as my mom always says, people need to learn how to knit or something. Amen. Here's a the dude drink, little White Russian to your mom. Logan Woon 5713 says, have you heard Thomas Newman will compose the Star Wars Starfighter theme? I can't wait. You know what? I'm sure that people will love Skyfighter like Skyfighter. People are going to love Starfighter the way McAdams loves Gosling, to quote. You know what? I'm just going to quote Lonely Island all the time when it comes to Gosling. I love Ryan Gosling. Have you seen, if anybody has watched, I'm obsessed with Ryan Gosling's hair on his Project Hail Mary press tour. Who's doing his hair? That zhuzh. Chef's kiss. Good for you. Is that you, Mark Avery? I mean, I thought you only did clothes, but if you're doing that hair, yes. DBZZ now says, I got to say, no matter your politics, Trump's speech yesterday sounded like Lord Farquaad's, some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. Trump has terrible messaging. That much is certain. That much is certain. Josh Haas says, I appreciate you, Rob. Much love and respect. Josh, right back at you. I don't, look, I wish we had a statesman and all that, but I personally, I think that the regime in Iran, it was a long time coming as somebody lived through the Iranian hostage crisis. Argo, fuck yourself. You know, I mean, I can't say, you know what? The Iranian people I've always thought are pretty cool. Like, I've met a lot of Persians here in Los Angeles. I'm a fan of the Persian ladies, as you might imagine. And Persian dudes are pretty cool. And they're one of the most successful immigrant groups that have come to America and actually added, they can be a little insular, but they've added to the American experiment. So I'm a big fan. And Iranian cinema, great. A lot of great Iranian movies. It's not Iran so far away. It's Iran. And I would love to see that country go back to the secular place that it was, because it's a very, very vibrant culture. And for almost 50 years, they've been oppressed by a horrible Islamic totalitarian regime. And why people are supporting that regime, like all the crazy leftists in our country, where people have just blows my mind, because they don't know history. They've read a whole lot of propaganda just spilled. I always have to keep a cloth around that I'm spilling. I always spill shit on my. Stop it! I know what you're thinking. I always spill stuff because I'm always drinking. It's not good. I can't tell you this Apple keyboard is a very resilient keyboard. Let me tell you, because I think I've spilled every manner of alcohol on this, and it still works. That is not an endorsement. I'm just saying it does. I love these keyboards. But anyway, you know, I look forward to what a liberated Iran would bring us in terms of movies, in terms of music, in terms of lots of cool things. Thomas Bennett says, it's Thomas Bennett here. I lost my YouTube username somehow. It used to be Thomas Bennett, and now it's, of course, Thomas Benetti. Okay. I'm right there with you. God, there's all these. This is so weird that super chats keep just popping up. Lord Fairbanks says, did you ever go bowling at the Hollywood Star Lanes in L.A.? Of course, where they filmed The Big Lebowski. Thanks for reading my letter in search of. Oh, I already read that one, but that's a different one. Did it say Did it say bowling at the Hollywood Star Lanes? I love that. I love the Hollywood Star Lanes. Yes, and Lucky Strike. Royston Bailey asks, who's the best sci-fi captain, Kirk, Picard, or Sisko? Well, come on. I mean, they're all good in their own way, but I'm a Kirk guy. What can I say? Yeah, I got to go back and look at these. Sean Beam says, yeah, go deep dive, people. You won't regret it. I don't know what that was referring to, Sean, but I agree. Silly Goose says, every person you meet has a story to tell, and all you have to do is listen. That's good. I should use that. Rob, I love you and the channel. If you could make a movie to expand on the idea of a Trek episode, which episode would you choose? That's a tough one. Make a movie to expand on the idea of a Trek episode. God, that's tough. Well, I'd probably go original series. And if expand on an episode, it'd have to be like okay, I'll tell you what I really wanted to do. I thought that if you were going to reboot, if someone asked me, they always ask me, what would be my idea for a Star Trek episode, or if I did a Star Trek show. There's an episode of the original series called A Taste of Armageddon, where it's the episode where Kirk finds the Enterprise rolls up on two planets, Aminiar and Vendikar, and they're fighting a war using computers. If I made a Star Trek show, I would do an entire season devoted to that, or an episode like that, where the Enterprise shows up, and the Enterprises if you remember the episode, they go down to this planet to Aminiar, and they meet Anon 7, and people are getting disintegrated if their computer says they're destroyed, and Kirk blows up their systems, and they're like, you have to figure out a way to make peace. I would do 10 episodes where you spend the entire 10 episodes dealing with that conflict. How are they going to stop this crazy fucking conflict? And you'd have to go to both Aminiar and Vendikar and explore their civilizations. And you have the Enterprise crew knowing that how could they stop this war without violating the Prime Directive? How could they get involved? Because they're technologically advanced. I don't think they have Starflight capabilities, so they can't. They're a pre-warp civilization still, I think. So, but that's what I would do. I would not so much a movie, or you could do it as a movie, but you would explore two different cultures that have been at each other's throats for hundreds of years. Who might that be? And you delve into both sides of the episode in a holistic fashion and show, and the idea would be you want to curtail this conflict by realizing that there is more that we have in common as people, as humans, or humanoids, or aliens, however you want to do it, and putting this, we have normalized war for 1,000 years, which is bad, and so we're going to stop that. But you would examine this conflict from all sides, and of course the built-in ticking clock would be the escalation of this war. Once the computer systems are down, then we're going to start shooting at each other for real, and that's what I would do. If I made, but it wouldn't be that. That's just an example of what episode I might expand upon. Real Thomas Logan says Trump will be known as the great liberator of the 2020s. First Venezuela, now Iran, now Cuba. These regimes should have been dealt with decades ago. Well, yeah, but there's a reason they're doing this, and it all has to do with China and oil. So, but we'll see where all of that goes. A Marty says, Rob, is there any hope for modern Trek? Also, sci-fi book recommendations. Love True Noir. Well, I always say, thank you for liking True Noir. In terms of book recommendations, there's a lot of things like Dan Simmons, who died, his Hyperion Cantos and Ilium, Hyperion, Fall of Hyperion, and Endymion and Rise of Endymion. I always talk about Peter Watt's book, Blind Sight, which I really, really like. Robert Charles Wilson's The Harvest. I mean, these are more modern kind of. If you haven't read Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash, read Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash. I mean, that's one of the more entertaining books I've ever read, and thought-provoking. And I think Neuromancer will already celebrated its anniversary. Man, there's a lot of good books. In terms of science fiction, there's so many. And read Alvaro Zainas Amaro's Equimedian. Really great book. The Con audio drama, I think I talked about that already. Jason Webster says, why aliens haven't come to Earth? Wars, disease, crime, unjust incarcerations, economic disparity, dictatorships, corruption, and Starfleet Academy. Yeah. I no lies detected. I don't know why. I mean, I always marvel. Like I was just dealing with our grass in our yard to get ready for this open house stuff, and I made sure the grass was all great. And then there was a gopher hole in the grass that I was just like made looking very nice. And I'm like, really? The funny thing is, there's probably a ton of gophers in this whole neighborhood that I never even think about. I don't even know what they're doing, but they have a vast network of tunnels. You know how that goes. And they pop up and they ruin my grass. But I mean, I don't know if aliens, I mean, I guess when we went nuclear, then they took notice of us, but I don't know. I don't know. Norwegian Kryptonian says, have you ever been to any of the concentration camps in Europe? I got to visit Mauthausen Memorial this January. Horrible place and so important to preserve. I've never been to one. I've never gone to a concentration camp, ever. I've always wanted to go, but I've never gone to one. So I apologize for that, but I will one day. One day I'm going to go. Richard says, I love True Noir. I've just finished listening to it. Wonderfully immersive world building. Thanks for reading my letter. I already read that already. I've read that like 3 times now. But you know what? It never gets, when you say you like True Noir, it never gets too tired. Let's see. I keep going down. I want to make sure that I don't miss anybody's super chats. I think I've caught up. BDZZ now says, I don't support the regime. I simply don't believe it will topple anytime soon. Additionally, I view it more like America cleaning up their past mistakes that derive from removing Mossadegh in 1953. Is that how you pronounce his name? Maybe. I'd have to look into that. I just don't know enough. Now I've been reading about it all day long. Blue Shirt Picard says, hey, Rob, have you checked out Brent Spiner and Jonathan Frakes' new podcast? I love it. I just finished watching the whole John Logan. The John Logan and the LeVar Burton episodes were really, really good. You are loved. Hang in there. Well, thanks about that. I have to say, when we made the Next Generation documentaries, I got to sit down with both Brent Spiner and Jonathan Frakes for a long time, 4 hours each. And they were terrific guys, terrific interviews. And you can see them on the Blu-ray. You can see those all of the, if you see all the Blu-ray stuff. Clarence Maxwell says, why don't you own a genie bottle for yourself? I Dream a Genie? I'd probably rub it too much. But I look, if I could get one, I would totally, I know that they were out there. I didn't buy one at the time. But I would buy one. I would totally buy a genie bottle. DUI Champ says, I made a comment earlier tonight that the difference between Kirk and Picard was Kirk's first love was the Enterprise and Picard's first love was Starfleet. What say you? Ooh, I like that. I think you're right. I mean, Kirk and Picard are different kinds of people, but, loving the Enterprise is also metaphoric. I mean, Kirk was truly a ship captain. He would have been with the wind at his hair or the wind at his back, and he was truly that guy, whereas Picard was a statesman. So I think that's very astute. I think that's very good. I like that. John Smith says, hey, Rob, where did you get that cool-looking Kingdom Come Superman that's on the shelf behind your right shoulder? That Kingdom Come Superman, by the way, silicon body. So where is he? Let me see. He's right there next to Mexican Iron Man's Iron Man. Oh, he's right there. That is a custom figure. They only made 75 of them. And because I love Kingdom Come, I bought it, and I love the body proportions on it. It's really, really cool. It's a really great figure. And I believe it has like a metal... Is that metal armature? I think it has a metal armature. There's so many interesting things on the shelves. I could put an I Dream a Genie bottle here somewhere. You can't even see half the stuff that's in here. One day I've got to do a tour because there's lots of stuff. So BDZZ says, what are your thoughts on Barry Weiss? Do you think she'll do well controlling CNN and CBS? I don't know much about her. Well, okay, she started the Free Press. She was at the New York Times and left. I like her. To be fair, I have a crush on her. She doesn't play for my team though, but that's okay. She's married to she has a wife, and not that matters. But I'm a fan of hers. I do like her position. I don't. Here's the thing. Everyone's going to get mad. I do believe in legacy media, and I think things like CBS should be, 60 Minutes, CBS and 60 Minutes should be sacrosanct. Those are things that I grew up watching. My family, my dad and I used to watch 60 Minutes every Sunday from the time I was a little kid. And I think that we need to protect true journalism. Nowadays, anybody has an opinion, and I think true journalism, the basic tenets of journalism are something that we should protect. In our look, we are soon going to, in 5 years, nothing is going to be true. We'll never know when we're looking at historical footage, whether it's real or AI, and most of it's going to be AI. And it's a bummer. It's a bummer that we as a civilization, we are in the wake of a sea change that I can't even begin to comprehend. And at the end of the day, I watched a really interesting video about how AI would move against humanity, and not in the way that Skynet would do it, but the way it was very fascinating. And I'm like, that's going to happen. It's going to happen. And how is that going to work for us? I don't know. But it'll be very interesting to see. I'm old school. I believe in preserving movies. I believe in preserving music. I believe in preserving our rich cultural legacy. But I am not somebody that says, oh my God, we shouldn't. I believe in advancement, and I believe in the future. I always have. And if humanity, if biological entities are not the future of mankind, and eventually, like in AI, we are going to be, if Orga becomes Mecha, well, that's the way things was meant to be. And that will be a bummer, but their experience of the universe will be different than ours. I don't know if it's any less valid. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't know where I'm going from Barry Weiss to the Mecha from Spielberg's AI, which was Kubrick's AI, which is why you watch this show late at night. I should be drunker than I am. But listen, it is now March 1st, people. It is March effing 1st. And as far as my house is concerned, beware the Ides of March. William Shatner turns 95 years old on March 22nd. 95. It's like when Ed Rooney said 9 times. Shatner's going to be 95 years old. Give that man an award. He's living his best life. He was on the Trek cruise last week. God bless William Shatner. And I can't believe that I work with him on a movie that came out 27 years ago. He wasn't even 70 yet when we worked with him. So, on that note, I'm going to end this show. I'm going to be back with Dieter Bastian and Max Allen Collins later today in 11 hours. Let's get physical media. I think episode number 229. You know what? Maybe I'll go to bed and crack this bad boy open so I can talk about it on tomorrow's show. This is, of course, Arrow's new banger release of Excalibur from 1981. John Borman's crazy movie Excalibur, One Land, One King. What is the secret of the Grail? Whom does it serve? You, my lord. You are Arthur. You are king. I love Excalibur. You know what? Excalibur and Conan the Barbarian were the best fantasy movies before Lord of the Rings. Excalibur was 81. Conan was 82. Fellowship of the Ring was 2001. Come at me, bro. I mean, if you talk about your Hunter from the Future, Crawl, come on. Give me a break. Not good. Excalibur, so good. Anyway, on that note, you guys, I want to thank everybody for coming with me on this journey tonight because I didn't know what this show was going to be. I was just going to turn on I was actually kind of feeling depressed about the state of the world. But you guys made me feel much better. Let me make sure just quickly that I didn't miss anyone else's tips. Sometimes they don't come in as well, but no, looks like I'm clear. I want to thank all of you for generously supporting this channel. I'm sorry we didn't do a membership call today. We'll do it next week. We had to deal with open houses yesterday and today, which I really didn't have to deal with. I mean, I wish I didn't have to deal with, but I am. So, hey, yeah, if you know where I can get a real quick hard money loan, I could use it. I can pay back in 6 months. That's what she said. But anyway, life goes on. But on that note, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better night, and we'll see you on Let's Get Physical Media. Thanks very much. And by the way, send me letters. I will be reading more. And for those of you whose letters I read, I'm going to see why that last show didn't fully finish uploading. It really bums me out because I did read a lot of people's letters, and I would hate that they didn't see their letters be read on the show. Anyway, I will talk at you later. And by the way, Arrow did announce that they're releasing 1983's Blue Thunder. So in the spirit of Malcolm McDowell's character in that movie, catch you later.